Hello you beautiful people and welcome to today's video. I really hope you don't hear the construction sounds outside, not so much. My neighbors are all renovating and you know, they're all cutting up rocks and wood and it's loud. I hope you don't hear that. So today I would like you to think about cheap art supplies you have at home, because the other day we went to a very cheap store. We go there about once a year, maybe less, and I picked up these very cheap watercolors because I wanted the box. So when they are used up, I can fill the box with my own watercolors. And also I bought some cheap watercolor colored pencils because I wanted the tin and they were so cheap, and I can use them for sketching. So I had the idea because I often hear that people, especially the young people, get cheaper watercolors in the beginning. Maybe a relative or a friend gives them to them, or they don't know any better, or they can't afford brand art supplies, brand watercolors. So what if you're stuck with very cheap art supplies and you don't have the funds to get something that's a bit better quality? Well, that's what this video is about. I just wanted to use these. I wanted to show you a way to use your very cheap art supplies and still get use out of them to practice. So you notice these are very, very bright and colorful. That's an indicator of a lot of filler. I sprayed these with water to let them soak a bit. That's another tip. If you have watercolors that are not easily reactivated, you can spray them with water to let them soak a bit. So if your watercolors look very bright in their little pans, they are very likely to have a white a filler material in them that makes them cheaper to produce and maybe makes them a bit opaque and looks white on paper. So this is why a lot of cheaper watercolors are opaque or whitish or chalky. So I also found these pastel pencils at my local drugstore. They are quite nice, so I put them in this tin too, and I took out the little compartments because they made it so you could really hardly grab the pen. There's cat hair everywhere. Alright, so also there was a water tank brush with these. That's a good start. There was a water tank brush with these that was not too bad, so I was very surprised by that. And this little set of watercolors did cost me €1.99, so I thought I cannot get a cheaper box that I can later use. Also this little brush came with it. It has seen better days. I don't know, maybe it has seen better days, maybe this is how it came to be, I don't know. I will not use that one. I will use the brushes I already have. These are also rather cheap brushes I got, and I prepared this lovely lady to color in today. So let's start with the base layer. What I'm gonna do, or what I'm planning to do, is that I'm going to use the watercolors as a base and then go on top when they're dry. with the colored pencils. That way I can add some details and a bit more deeper shading, because a lot of times very cheap watercolors tend to not be so colorful and not that deep in color. And yeah, if you are looking for a cheapish watercolor set, if you live in Europe, where I live, I can highly recommend the Talens watercolors, because they are very nice for the price. I use them on my sketchbooks a lot, and yeah. So let's start coloring this lovely lady. And I think these colors have some kind of, they feel a bit like they have a bit of a gel texture, like they feel like a jelly when you soak them a bit, which is funny, and also it makes them so they don't dry that quickly, which is bad if you're impatient like me, and which is good if you are using a lot of wet in wet technique. This watercolor paper, by the way, is a very cheap watercolor paper by the brand Lucas. Also, what I noticed is that this is called olive green. This is not olive green, this is yellow. This is the only green that has a bit of green in it, because these are both yellows, which is funny. But yeah, I expected that. Also, they absorb the water like crazy. They have a very, very weird texture if you're used to normal watercolors like I am. So yeah, but they're still usable. And if you have those at home, I'm not saying you should get them, but if you have cheap watercolors at home and you have to make use of them, this is just a way of using them. So I have a cable on here and it's annoying. All right. Usually I don't really get those cheap art supplies, but once or twice a year I'm just like, I just really want to try this, and if I stumble upon something like this, I'm just like, I really want to try it, and I wanted to see how bad these really were. And for like $2, these are not too horrible in my opinion. They are usable, they are not like little stones that can't be reactivated. Pretty okay, I would say. I still wouldn't get these like as my main watercolor set, of course. I had to use them because I could not have others. You can make use of them, especially if you combine them with colored pencils or other art materials. Like, see what you have laying around at home, and then you will probably find some supplies to use with the watercolors or with your other art supplies. And I did want to say something. I know that her skin looks a bit yellowish, at least in real life. I don't know how it looks on camera, but in real life it looks a bit yellow. I find the color selection not that bad. I find it rather interesting because it's not the typical German color selection that we have in our watercolor boxes or tins that you can buy pre-assembled. Because also there's 2 grays in it. They don't show up very well, to be honest, so I'm not making a lot of use out of them, maybe for the dress. But yeah, the tones are unusual for this part of the world. So I found that very interesting as well. Don't know if I zoomed out a lot, so you can't see it very well, but they have a rather strange consistency. Very unusual, but it's fine. As I said, the grays don't show up that much, but since we are planning to go on top of these colors with colored pencils, and we're just using these colors as a base. It's cool, it's fine. The black, on the other hand, is very strong, so I'm using it very, very gently. Alright, and I'm now going to use the only green that's really green as a base for the leaves, and it's a very lemony green as well, but it will work for the way we want to work with it. Also, what I want to add is at the base of it, there's nothing wrong with buying cheap art supplies from time to time for the purpose of sketching when you know you don't have the funds to use a lot of very expensive art supplies just to sketch and learn in your sketchbook. I don't see a problem with buying cheap art supplies as long as you do it consciously, as long as you do it as long as you don't just buy a lot of art supplies that you're not going to use just because they're cheap, but because if you buy them because you want a very affordable option to learn and to use in your sketchbook. Like, that's very, very okay and very valid, and I can relate to that a lot because, you know, money doesn't grow on trees. And sometimes you just can't afford to buy these very expensive options. Like, I can understand that people can't or don't want to use Horadam watercolors in their sketchbooks. Like, I can get that, I can get behind that. And sometimes you have to make use of what you have or what is available to you. Just putting that out there, because I know, like, sometimes people shame young artists or beginner artists or artists in general who use very cheap art supplies, and there are very good affordable options these days, like talents, depending on where you live. And sometimes it's worth it to save up for art supplies. But still. Also, these said on the packaging that they were artist quality, and I think that's not, like, you know, that's not a word that's protected by any laws at the moment, so everyone can say, oh, it's professional quality because it's in a box. So but yeah, just mentioning that's not an indicator of a good art supply. So I'm also gonna use these if you're living in Germany. These are from Rossmann, not affiliated, not sponsored, but they were fairly cheap and they are very nice as pastel colors go. They have a lot of white in them, so they do appear better on darker paper. Also, I found it very cool that the set that I got from these watercolor pencils, so you could reactivate them with water and they activate very nicely. I tested that before. I found the color selection very, very nice as well. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I was just lucky. Of course, you can use any colored pencils you have at home to go over your watercolor layer. There's no rules which you should use. You can go on top with like nicer brands, if you like, who are a bit, which are a bit softer maybe. You can do whatever you like. This technique also, of course, you can use with your nice art supplies. But I just thought I'd make a video about cheap ones because I just bought them. And it's always a good idea to go over your areas with multiple colors of colored pencils. It gives the whole thing a bit more vibrancy, a bit more depth, a bit more oomph. I think you can already see a little difference. And of course, if you do have watercolor pencils that you're going over your watercolors with, you can use a bit of water to blend out areas who may have been or may have become a bit patchy, or they just are a bit too strong for your taste, like that. And I'm just looking for colors to make the shadows in her hair a bit deeper, so I'm using this very dark red. It's always fun to see which colors work together. So if you have a brown, you don't have to necessarily shade with another brown. You can use a darker color, you can use a violet, you can use a color of any variety if you like. You don't have to stick to the color you have the base layer, have made the base layer with. You can use, as I said, any color you like and experiment and have fun. And this is just about learning and getting to know your art supplies and ways to use them so they are more fun. And as I mentioned, you can add a lot of details with colored pencils. You can also use colored pencils on top of alcohol markers, water-based markers. The possibilities are, well, not that endless, but the possibilities are far stretched. And just a little heads up, of course, these art supplies will not be light fast. The pigments used in them were most likely not real pigments, but dye-based colors, like, you know, synthetic ones maybe. Dye is just something like they use in felt tip pens and water-based markers, and they're just not light fast. It's just so keep that in mind if you want to hang up these drawings. They will not last that long, but they are fine for scanning them in, printing them maybe if you like. If you have created something that you're very proud of and you want to preserve it, you can always scan it and print it with a printer or with like a photo service or something. And you can also stick them in your sketchbook to preserve them, because they're mostly safe from UV light, which causes pigments to fade over time. I mean, not all colors, professional watercolors are light fast. Some real pigments even aren't even light fast, so it's just in their nature to fade one day. Oh, and of course, if you're going over something with watercolors or water in general, you have to use a liner that's waterproof and has pigment ink, and so it does not wash away when you're using water. And I always like to use a bit of yellow in the end, because it makes pencil drawings a lot more warm and nice, and I just like it. So yeah, that's it. That's my little drawing using the €2 watercolors and my cheap colored pencils. And I hope I could inspire you to use your cheap art supplies and have a bit of fun with them, sketching, learning about them and colors and stuff. Yeah, I hope you're gonna have fun creating something after this, and I see you next time. And until I see you, please, it makes you happy. Bye!